I'm also going to connect this to Facebook because if sometimes people like to show up via Facebook itself, and that takes a minute or so, but it won't take too long. So let me see. Okay. It's coming. Here we go. Also, I've got a friend here tonight, and I asked
He's
Donna
great.
to remind me to talk about my little friend here, Koala,
Yes, talk about koala.
before the
That's
evening is
funny.
over.
Oh, look, he's talking about his friend. His other friend.
Okay, go live.
Right.
All live.
Need to add a title. You didn't tell me I had a title. I didn't see a place. Okay,
Oh, here we go.
we are now spanning the globe on via Facebook.
Yes, it says meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. There's this little sign that says that.
Thank you. Whether you guys could see that or not.
Yeah,
I can.
Me too.
Great. I'll continue to keep an eye out for anybody who's coming on, but I also, again, I'm going to be looking up from time to time, and that's because I have notes there.
Okay.
And I want to, again, welcome everybody to this. This is the Zach Bates Eco Adventure Read Up Hour number 3. My team, and I'll introduce part of my team here in just a moment, we're thrilled to have you join us as we continue the journey of reading Dominion Over All. Dominion Over All is the first book in the Zach Bates Eco Adventure series. Again, as you can see on my screen, my name is Brad Swift. I'm the author of this series. And I started writing this series several years ago, actually, as one of my ways of paying it forward to all the many authors who wrote tons of different books that I read growing up I started reading for pleasure around the 4th grade. And I figured at some point I wanted to start to give back to all those authors that spent hundreds and thousands of hours writing those books that I loved and I enjoyed reading, and that for the most part kept me out of trouble growing up. It's also my hope that this series will actually do the same. We'll inspire young people, many of you that are here tonight. Actually, we're all young at some level, right? Lifelong readers. If you're not a lifelong reader, that's really part of the intention of this, is to share the joy of reading for pleasure. And believe it or not, there's a lot of benefits, but we don't want to talk about the benefits of reading for pleasure too much with the kids, because then they'll think it's something like having to take vitamins, and they won't want to do it. So it's mostly just a lot of fun. That's the main thing to know. So my role tonight is primarily as the MC, which is another way of calling Masters of Ceremony, kind of guy who just kind of keeps things moving along. I'm not Jimmy Kimmel. I don't have that good of a sense of humor, but I do like to play as the MC itself. So the other part that I'll be doing is recapping a portion of the story that we've already covered, because some of you have not been here before. And so it'd be, a little bit like going into a movie after the, first hour is underway, and you'd be like, who's that? And what's this one doing? And so I'm going to kind of do a recap of what we've covered in the previous recap read-ups. And then I'm going to turn it over to the real star, Benjamin Fife, or I know him as Ben, who is the professional audiobook narrator. Now, that's what he does for a living. And I grabbed him at the perfect time, just before he quit his day job to go pro. And so he has recently, just within the last month, completed the narration of the 3 books that currently make up the series: Dominion Over All, endangered, and ghost elephant. And I think
Oh,
currently makes up the series because I'm hard at play writing the fourth book, which is the working title of which is Junkyard Dogs. And we'll talk more about the audiobooks and the book number 4, later itself. I also want to thank the other members of the Zach Bates outreach team who are here tonight. JD, Mary Pat, Crystal Bright, and David Pay, who will probably be joining us later. And hopefully I'll see it when his, signal comes up and I'll let him in the room. Because without those people, that part of this outreach team, many of you would never have heard of this. So I'm out here in probably my last encore of life to make as big a difference by inspiring as many young people as possible to become lifelong readers. And so without my team, this would be a much smaller party. So thank you to my team for doing this. Now,
team.
Yes.
while I'm recapping and while Ben is reading, I ask that you either remain on mute or stay very quiet. And periodically, I'll pause, or Ben will pause, to chat about the story and also to give you an opportunity to ask any questions. And I might ask you a few questions as well. And there will also be time at the end of the call for questions and answers, and I'll stay on, a little bit afterwards, for that as well, if we need that extra time. Okay. Now, let's start with a quick recap. So in the previous ones, we'd covered chapter 1 through 5. And in that first chapter, we meet members of what is to become the Eco Adventure Team. The story starts off with a young Zach Bates, one of the main characters, is cleaning out the cages of his small private zoo. He loves animals and he loves magic. And his Karen Terrier, canine friend that he's had for most of his life, Angus, grows bored while waiting for Zach. So he runs across the street to the park to chase squirrels. Unfortunately, he doesn't check for traffic on the way back, and he's struck by a car. Now, as a former small animal veterinarian in practice for about 15 years, I had many cases where people suddenly appeared at my veterinary hospital with their animal that had been hit by a car. It's no fun. And so obviously Zach is very distraught. He and Kalita rush Angus to Dr. George's hospital, where Zach meets, among other people, Allison George, Dr. George's daughter, who is about the same age as he is. And there he also meets a mangy black cat who introduces herself as Readup, the last living magic cat. Yeah, that's right. She can talk, though she's careful to hide it from anyone other than Zach. And she convinces Zach that she can save Angus's life, but only if he promises to do something for her. And on top of that, she won't say what it is that he has to do. If you're not familiar with what it is, that's called blackmail. Now, finally, in desperation, Zach agrees, and sure enough, Readup performs some amazing magic that brings Angus back from the edge of death. And after Zach leaves, Readup walks through the wall. I told you Reacup's a magic cat. Walks through the wall to the hospital to meet her traveling companion. And we all know if you've been watching the video, the traveling companion is Samson, a giant dog. Think Newfoundland. Think really big. And Newfoundland, Samson berates her for how she blackmailed Zach to help them on their mission. But what's the mission? Neither Zach or we know at this point. Now, the morning after the accident, Zach is eating a breakfast of pancakes and OJ, And he casually looks over at his dad's newspaper sitting on the table next to him when he sees the headline. Now, for you kids, there was a day in time where there was always a newspaper on the breakfast table, believe it or not. On there was a headline that said Environmental Summit to Address Global Warming, Opposition Mounts. Now, Zach doesn't normally pay much attention to the front page, but since he's an owner of a zoo, and even though it's a small one, the headline kind of catches his attention. News about this whole global warming stuff seems to be everywhere. And he also realized that his dad's work at Consolidated Enterprises might have something to do with the environment. So he decides to read further. And that's where he learns that we also learn later on in that chapter that Zach is shy, especially around girls. And he's not looking forward to starting school in a new location. Unfortunately, as luck would have it, his luck actually runs out with one of the school's bullies picks him out of the crowd and warns him to stay away from the one person that Zach knows and actually likes, which happened to be Allie George, the vet's daughter. Now, as if that's not bad enough, Zach then learns what Racket, the magic cat, expects him to do. And since that's an important part of it, I'm going to read that part itself. So, what is it? Racket says, you are to represent us. By that, I mean all the animals of the world. Yeah? Represent you how? Where? Zach asked, as he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand at attention. At the United Nations, at the Environmental Summit, you are to take our mandate before the world leaders. You are to persuade them to cease the careless and needless poisoning of our planet. You are to make sure they understand that the animals who they share this planet with will no longer stand for such carelessness. Zach can't believe his ears. And he's completely baffled how she could make such a request or think he'd be able to accomplish the task. But Racket is insistent that Zach is the one and the only one who can pull this off with her help, of course. So she then orders him to return the next morning to start the mission. No matter what Zach says, Racket won't budge. So he finally agrees to come back the next day. And that's what we covered in the first read-up itself. So now we're going to start. I'm going to give a very brief summary or kind of summary of the beginning part of chapter 6, and then we'll go right into chapter 6, and you'll realize how much better Benjamin is at narrating the story itself than I am. So tonight, we're going to pick up the story early on Saturday morning, the following morning, as Zach bicycles back to the animal hospital as Racket had instructed him. On the ride over, he's still trying to come to terms with the mission he's agreed to while hoping it's really just a bad dream. Maybe she's trapped inside, he thinks and hopes. If she can't get out, I shouldn't have to wait around for her. If she doesn't keep her appointment, the deal should be off. But even as he thinks it, he sees her white-tipped black tail gliding through the broom star. She's not trapped, but I feel like I am, he thinks as he dismounts his bike and pushes it along beside him. And here, we pick up the story read tonight by our professional audiobook narrator, Ben Fife. Turn it over to you, Ben.
Hide your bike in that clump of trees. I'm sure it will be okay, Racket ordered. Not so much as a good morning, how are you? Zach thought. Here I get up hours before I normally do to meet her to go on some crazy escapade, and she doesn't have the decency to even say hello. Grumbling under his breath, he did as he was told, pushing the bike deep into the woods. His bike was one of his treasured possessions, and he didn't want anyone to see it from the parking lot. He laid it flat on the soft pine straw floor to make it harder to see. As he turned around, he found himself staring eyeball to eyeball with the biggest, blackest dog he had ever seen. Although Zack was not usually afraid of animals, the sudden appearance, coupled with the monstrous size of the beast, unnerved him, and he stumbled back a few steps. His back heel caught on his bike's tire, and he lost his balance, finally coming to rest on his rear. Despite the pine straw, the fall jarred him down to his teeth. He sat there stunned, half expecting the dog to leap for his throat. Instead, the dog stood his ground, staring at Zack with sad brown eyes. I'm so sorry. Did I frighten you? The dog asked in a deep bass voice that rumbled like the sound of distant thunder. The dog towered over him. Its thick, shaggy black fur glistened in the morning sun. Somehow it seemed to Zack he should be getting used to talking to animals by now, but he was astonished by the dog's speech as he had been by Rakit's, especially the somewhat aristocratic accent of the hulking dog. He didn't know what to say, so he said nothing, just sat there with what he knew must have been the dumbest look on his face. The dog took a couple of steps toward him, then stopped and sat down, extending his paw as he did so. Samson's the name. You must be Zack, is that right? Slowly, Zack stood up and cautiously shook the huge paw as he gazed into a set of the saddest brown eyes he'd ever seen. Yeah, that's right. I'm Zack, he answered with a waver to his voice. I didn't hear you behind me. Oh, yes, I can be very quiet when I want to be. It's part of Rakit's training. It's second nature now. I do apologize. I imagine it was quite a fright. Zack found the dog's concern comforting. I think I'm going to like you, Samson, he thought. At least you're not as ornery as Rakit. Oh, it's all right. I'm sure I've had worse scares, Zack answered in a firmer voice. And I dare say you'll have many more before this mission is completed, Samson warned. Oh, I wish you hadn't said that, Zack groaned. Still, I imagine you might be right. What's going on in there? Rakit called from the edge of the trees. I asked you to hide your bike, not bury it. Come on, we've got work to do. Samson chuckled, although to Zack it sounded more like a bowling ball rolling into the gutter. She's such an impatient cat. Never known her to take it easy. Always go, go, go. I suppose we shouldn't keep her waiting. After you. Samson motioned the way with his paw. Zack glanced back to be sure his bike was still lying flat and out of view, then exited the woods with Samson following close behind. I see the two of you have met, Rakit said as Samson came out of the woods behind Zack. We don't want to dally around here. It won't be long before someone comes to check on the animals in the hospital. Rakit paused for a moment and glanced first at Zack, then at Samson, then back to Zack. I'm not much for speeches, but before we begin, I feel compelled to say something about the mission upon which we are embarking. She looked at Samson. We've been on many assignments together, but none as important as this. The fate of the entire animal kingdom rests on our shoulders. If we fail, there won't be a second chance. They won't send anyone else because there isn't anyone else that can do the job. If we fail, thousands, maybe millions of animals will be killed in the riots that will follow. No telling how many humans will die as well. It doesn't really matter because the rest of the animals and humans will die a much slower but more painful death by the pollution, and much sooner than you humans have estimated. She directed this last remark to Zack. The imbalance in nature your species has created will be all of our downfall. Humans haven't been around long enough to realize the disaster that is about to befall them. The Earth's atmosphere is heating up rapidly. The buildup of carbon dioxide, the destruction of the ozone layer, you are aware of this, I'm sure. What you may not be aware of is that the condition which is occurring, it's not just something that might happen. This condition is accelerating, the rate at which animals must learn to adapt. Unfortunately, evolution is like a snail. It has one pace and one pace only. Animals cannot make the needed adaptations that these environmental conditions demand, so we will all perish. She looked directly at Zack. All of us, all the animals, and in case you have forgotten, like the rest of your species, humans are animals, and as far as nature is concerned, you must answer to the same laws. Zack found Rakit's stare as uncomfortable as what she was saying, but could not break away from her penetrating eye. He was relieved when she broke the stare herself. Now, she said, flicking her tail in the air, that we know where we stand and what the stakes are, let's get to it. She turned to Samson. Our first stop will be the Council of Animals. Do you think you can get us there without getting us lost? Now that's not fair, Rakit, Samson grumbled. I was only following your directions. My directions, indeed. You may have been following my directions as you heard them, but that was obviously quite distinct from what my directions actually were. Otherwise, we'd have ended up where I directed you. Zack realized this was not a new argument they were having, and decided to sway the conversation away from the sore subject. What is the Council of Animals? He asked. Both of his new companions stopped, as though surprised to find someone else around. Finally, Rakit answered.
Very good. Okay, we're going to just take a quick pause here until Ben will continue the story in just a moment. I'd like to ask, and again, you're on mute, so just, I would love to hear your response to this. What do you think the Council of Animals is? Anybody want to take a guess? Now, some of you may have actually read part of the book, so that's a little bit cheating, but that's okay. Yeah, like Rosie. I know Rosie knows. I see you, Rosie. Okay. So I think I see Nicole. I'm not sure who your friend is beside you, but he has his hand raised.
Millie.
Say again?
Her name is Millie.
Millie. Okay, I'm sorry. Bad eye. I should probably put my glasses on. I can see. Oh yes. Hey Millie, what do you think the Council of Animals is?
The three spirits, and they represent the carnivores, the herbivores, and the domestics.
Wow, what a tremendous, great guess. Very good. I got a feeling she might have read ahead.
I think that's a bit more than a guess.
Yeah.
Very good, very great. Okay,
We didn't quite know where you guys were, so we wanted to make sure we were at least caught up.
good. That's fine. Yeah, that's a good point. I'll make sure that in the future one, we'll let people know exactly where we will be starting from. That's a very good point. Okay. Also, where, and Melly, you can't answer this one. Where do you think the Council of Animals might be? I've got something that's, no, there we go. Got that out of the way. Anybody want to take a guess where the Council of Animals is? Or it actually did say kind of that they're at the spiritual frontier. So what, another way of asking the question is, what do you think the spiritual frontier is? Okay.
No idea.
What's the second question? What's the second guess? No, I'm just kidding. So that's fine. There's
That's
one
the
more-
end of 2001.
Say again?
That's the end of 2001, right?
Yeah, the millennium when it changed.
Gotcha. Right.
No, no, I'm referring to the movie.
Question: if you were in Zach's shoes at this point, he's got this, what appears to be this impossible mission. He's going to go see these council of the Council of Animals, in this faraway place called the, spiritual frontier. How would that feel for you? What would you do if you were in his shoes? And Millie, you can't answer. You've read ahead. That's fine. Just just kind of think about it. It's kind of a question, doesn't need an answer, but it's kind of a question of kind of put yourself in his shoes. He's a young boy. He's in early teenage years. Oh, I see a hand raised over there with Jonathan. Yes, Jonathan.
Yeah, Libby.
I would want to get immediately out of Zach's shoes that instant.
Okay. Very good. Me too. In fact, as I wrote, it was kind of like, I'm not sure. I don't know where to go with this guy, so yeah, very good. I'm going to ask one last question, then we'll resume the story. And this is kind of one I want you to kind of ponder about. I ask it at all the read-ups. If you were to go on a mission to help the animals of the world, you went with Racket, Magic Cat, Samson the Flying Dog, and Zach, what mission would you go on? Like if you could actually choose a mission that you'd want to go on with a Magic Cat and a Flying Dog and Zach, what would be that mission? And the reason I'm asking that question, one is I want to have you get in touch with how would you particularly want to help the animals of the world? And secondly, by asking that question, I may actually find what book number 5 will be about. I asked that question in the first read-up. And the germ of the idea for Junkyard Dogs actually came from one of the participants in that. And her first name will be the name of the main character. So I'm not promising your name will be in book 5. I'm not promising I'll use your idea, but that's part of the reason I'm asking the question. So I think Millie has her, is it Millie? Am I getting that right? She has a question, she has a comment.
I do the same one.
Oh, she would like to do what Zach is doing. So she doesn't have an idea about a new one yet. She's got to think on it.
Okay, but you'd like to be on this mission, huh? I'll keep that in mind. So if
Nathan, what would you want to do?
yes, Nathan?
If I would choose a mission, I would choose a mission that ain't that deadly.
Say that
One
again.
that's not that deadly. What about the helping the sharks?
I would
'Cause
say,
Nathan loves sharks.
if they had choppers, you might want to avoid that.
I was going to say, I don't know, going on a mission to help the shark would be less deadly either.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Well, be thinking about that,
Go
because
on.
I asked that question again towards the end of the call tonight. What would that be, what that mission would be? And I'm also going to send it to an email, which you're not going to want to miss that email because there's some special material, some special surprises in the email that you or your parents can respond to it that way as well. Before we go on, it looks like JD has a comment or question.
I think it'd be cool if they went on one where they went back in time and they tried to save the dinosaurs.
Oh,
Oh,
How would
I
they do
like
that?
that. I like that. I mean, after all, it's a Magic Cat. She can walk through walls. Why can't she, walk through time?
mhm.
And how the book ends is the dinosaurs and the cat, they all decide that instead of saving that, the dinosaurs are willing to go ahead and become extinct. So the future Earth can have whatever the dinosaurs give it with fossil fuels and stuff like that.
Well, that's kind of circular.
Mhm.
All right.
Good
Okay,
luck.
good. Great question. I'm glad I'm recording this. I'm going to, come listen to this later. Okay, we're going to have Ben resume his next part. Thanks, everybody.
They are the ruling. Oh, we're back on. Okay. They are the ruling spirits of the animal kingdom. Through them, all matters of major importance are handled. Did you say spirits? Zach asked. Yes, spirits. Rakit replied, as though it was a silly question to have to answer. The animal world is much more closely connected than most humans realize. Samson intervened. We are all in touch with each other at any given moment. Not quite what humans would call in communication, but almost. There's a connectivity that we experience no matter what our species. The connection is through the spirit world. So, in essence, we are also in connection with our ancestors as well. How are we to contact these spirits? Zack asked, uncertain whether to believe what he was hearing. Well, if you'll stop asking so many silly questions, and if Samson doesn't lose the way, we can be there in the time it would take to answer your questions, Raykit said as she walked over to Samson and climbed on his back. She looked petite next to the giant dog. After a moment, she waved to Zack. Well, come on, climb on board. We haven't all day. Zack looked at her and then to Samson, who nodded. Don't worry. Despite what she says, I know what I'm doing, Samson replied. Are we going to walk to the council? Zack asked as he pulled himself on Samson's shoulders behind Raykit. Not exactly, Samson replied with a chuckle. He took a couple of galloping strides away from the trees, then leapt into the air. In the next instant, Zack realized they were flying over the roof of the veterinary clinic. He dug his fingers deeply into the thick fur of Samson's neck and closed his eyes. This can't be happening, he thought. I'm just having one of those crazy flying dreams of mine. In a few moments, Kalita will shake me and tell me it's Monday morning and time for school. He continued to keep his eyes closed for several seconds, finally opening them in the hope of seeing the familiar surroundings of his bedroom. Instead, his eyes and stomach were assaulted with an aerial view of his neighborhood. Zack had never had a problem with heights, but this was different. The only thing between him and the ground was a couple 100 feet of air and a large dog. And dogs don't fly, his mind told him. So I must be in deep trouble. He managed to glance down and noticed they were passing over Mr. Brown's house. Old Man Brown was at the end of his driveway, stooping to pick up the morning paper. Zack considered calling out to the old man for help, but stopped himself. He doubted he'd be heard. Plus, he was afraid if the old man looked up and saw them, he'd keel over from a heart attack. Raykit glanced over her shoulder at Zack. Don't worry, they can't see us. Part of the spell I placed on Samson that allows him to fly also makes us invisible to everyone below. Samson turned his head to one side and laughed. Yeah, except when that part of the spell doesn't work. Just the other day. That was a fluke and of no concern, Raykit interrupted. Pay attention to where you're going, or you'll fly us into another flock of geese. Zack shook his head. No one is ever going to believe this, he thought. Shoot, I don't believe it myself. Something told him this was going to be a long trip. He lowered his head so he could speak to Raykit without yelling. Where are we going? He noticed the shakiness of his voice and was embarrassed that his fear was so obvious. We're looking for a cloud, a particular kind of cloud, Raykit answered. When we find it, we'll enter it, and it'll give us access to the spiritual frontier. Oh, great. Zack felt a new flutter in his stomach and was glad he had skipped breakfast. He would probably be dumping it on Mr. Brown's head by now. Raykit bent down and spoke in Samson's ear. There's one over there. Let's try it. Samson nodded and changed course, redirecting them towards a distant cloud. As they approached it, Zack noticed the cloud looked a bit like a large animal. A hippo or maybe a rhino. It looks like an animal. Of course, Raykit explained. The keepers of the gate mark the entry points of the spiritual frontier with their own likeness. Evidently, the hippos are on the gate this week. As they neared the cloud, it seemed to take on more and more detail of the animal. With only 50 yards to go, Raykit turned to Zack again. Hold on tight. Some of the trips through the portal can be rough. That's an understatement if I ever heard one, Samson said with a laugh. Knowing how lazy the hippos are, I'd be willing to bet the portal is not going to be in good shape. I just hope it's sufficient for us to get through. What happens if it isn't? Zack asked as the cloud loomed in front of them. It could spit us back out at such a speed I'd never be able to get control before we struck the ground. Zack was about to suggest a number of alternatives, but it was too late. Before he could speak, they were engulfed in the thick fog of the cloud. Back to you, Brad.
Okay. So we got them stuck in a cloud, but they might have to watch out because they might get spit out. We're going to continue here. I'm just going to take again, very short break. I'm going to do a very quick recap of the start of chapter 6. But I also want to ask a question before we turn it back over to Ben. So in chapter 6, it flashes back to Zach's home, where Kalita, his mom, goes to his room to find that he's not there. And the first thing that she notices is that it's cleaner than she's ever seen it. And then she sees a note on the bed. Thanks for letting me go visit Luke. That's Zach's older brother. Don't worry about me. I'll see you soon. Love, Zach, is what the note says. And at first she's kind of like confused because she can't remember anything about giving Zach permission to visit his brother. But then suddenly it's like, oh yes, I must have done that. As Raket's magic takes effect and she goes about her day. So my question, especially to the kids, but maybe also to some of the parents, what would it be like to have a magic cat who could not only clean your room, but also cover for you when you had to disappear on a special mission? What would that be like? Anybody raise your thumbs if you'd be all in favor of having a magic cat who could come and clean your room. JD has his thumb up. Crystal, yeah, definitely. Definitely. So that's part of the reason I write. I have these fantasies. Like I would love to have somebody who, you know, particularly when I was growing up, who would come and clean my room, because it was, well, what can I say? It was just downright messy. So there's one thing though that Raket's very clear that she doesn't do, and I don't remember if we actually read that or not, so you may have had to read it. So it's one thing that she does all this stuff to kind of cover so that Zach can go on these missions and all that. She can walk through walls, but there's one thing she says, I don't do. Actually, there's two things, but right now there's only one thing. One thing that she doesn't do. Can anybody guess what that one thing is that she doesn't do? Yeah,
Litter boxes.
Ben, you don't count. So
Litter boxes.
Doesn't lift boxes.
Litter boxes. She doesn't clean litter boxes.
Doesn't.
Of course she doesn't. She's a cat. She'd be too busy.
Oh no, JD, but I sure wished I had thought about that. Anybody else want to take a guess?
I think I remember what it is.
Okay, what is it?
It's homework. She doesn't do homework.
That's right. I don't do homework.
I want to point out this is Eleanor who drew the two new coloring pictures. So
thank you for doing that. I was wondering, I was thinking, it was kind of slowly making that connection. So if you haven't gone to our webpage recently, again, I'll send that in the email, follow-up email. We have now 4 coloring pages that you can download, print out, and color. I've got one. Actually, during this next break, I'll go and get it. I haven't finished it, but the last 2, Eleanor did. And she did such a great job. We're now in the process of creating our first Zach Bates coloring book that we hope to have on sale by the end of the year, first of next year itself. So it's great meeting you. This is the first time we actually have met. So great meeting you. Okay, let's go. I don't know, Ben, whether we'll get through chapter all the way through chapter 6, but let's go through that first section, and then we'll stop there and take a look at the time.
immediately on entering the cloud, the trio was buffeted from side to side by the crisscrossing winds. Despite his massive size, Samson had to fight hard to keep on a direct course. Rakit and Zach clung with all their strength to his neck, hanging on for dear life while at the same time trying to give Samson room to maneuver. The black dog continued to fly towards the center of the cloud, growling with determination against the strong winds. Zack noticed their course was taking them in a more or less rising spiral with increasingly tighter circles. As they neared the center of the cloud, Zack caught glimpses of a bright light, as though a spotlight shone through the cloud from above. I see the vortex, Rakit shouted into Samson's ear. Over a little more to your left. Hold on, we're almost there. Zack wasn't sure the order to hold on was directed to him or Samson, but he dug his aching fingers deeper into the nap of Samson's coat. Tears streamed from his eyes and were immediately swept away by the strong wind. Less than an hour into the mission, and he was already in trouble, about to be blown off his charge by a storm caused by a group of unconcerned, lazy hippos. Where would he end up if he lost his grip on Samson? Would he spin inside the animal-shaped cloud forever, or be dashed to the ground thousands of feet below? Not liking either alternative, he pulled himself closer to Samson, crushing Rakit between himself and the dog's neck. For some reason, he thought it was just as important to keep Rakit from falling off. It was possible that she was the source of the magic that kept them afloat, and if she was separated from them, they might all tumble to the ground. With one final deep-throated growl, Samson reached the channel of light that was larger than Zack had first thought. As soon as they entered the light, the circular winds dissipated, and they found themselves being pulled straight into the air at an alarming speed. Zack was surprised to find that, despite the speed with which they were ascending, there was no sensation of wind. It was as though they were in a total vacuum, or enclosed in a small cylinder which blocked the wind. After an eternity of a few minutes, their rate of ascent slowed and finally stopped. Samson paddled his way to the edge of the cloud and stepped onto the land of the spiritual frontier.
Very good. So we have arrived to the spiritual frontier, and we're now looking at, we're going to spend a little bit of time in the spiritual frontier itself. But I want to also just take, again, a short break and see if anybody has downloaded and done a coloring page. Not a problem, it's completely optional, but I did want to show mine off, as if in case anybody else has one. See if I can get it up there. This is what the actual coloring page itself is one that Eleanor did. And you can see it's not complete, but it started, and I thoroughly have enjoyed it. I need to get some different color pencils because the ones I color it's lighter. I like more vibrant colors, so I may have to invest in some crayons like one of our buddies. Oh, look at this. Let's see Nicole's. Very good, Nicole. Excellent. And that's one of Eleanor's as well. One of the ones that she did. Anybody else have one? Okay, so again, I'll make sure the link is so you can go there and download them. And listen, this isn't just for the kids. It's primarily for the kids, but it's also for us adults. A lot going on right now, a lot of craziness in the world with COVID and the election and you name it. It's a very relaxing exercise. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I plan to continue to color itself. So when you go to download it, download at least two, one for you and one for your kids as well. Okay, so I'm going to continue. There's one other question I want you to think about, and we'll address at the very end, along with what mission you want to go in. I'd like to know from the kids primarily, but again, it could also be the adults. Are any of you interested in becoming a writer? Are you interested in writing either recreational as a hobby or professionally? I just would like to know. So again, we'll address that question as we get further into it. Okay, back to you, Ben.
Oh, sorry, I'm chatting. I'm bragging about my daughter. So, okay.
Go for it. I don't blame you.
Anyway, yes, Eleanor is awesome with her art. So I'm excited to see what she does with the rest of them. Okay, back to the book. Chapter 7. Zach blinked his eyes several times to clear the tears, then squinted his eyes closed tightly for a few seconds to be sure of what he saw. In front of him was a broad expanse of rolling plains interspersed with crystalline blue lakes. Less than 20 yards away, along the shore of one such lake, wallowed a dozen or more hippopotami, basking in the warm breeze and bright sun. As Zach gazed around, his mouth cast in an O of awe. He noticed a special brightness and clarity of the colors of his surroundings. Then he noticed the strangest thing of all. There was no horizon. The land seemed to go on forever, finally drifting out of view in a purple haze. He realized he still clung tightly to Samson's coat and relaxed his grip and climbed down. As he did so, he noticed Raykit glaring at him. I'd appreciate it in the future if you wouldn't attempt to suffocate me as we are riding. She snapped at him as she jumped off Samson. She sat down and cleaned her fur with her tongue to emphasize how much she'd been manhandled. Sorry, I didn't want you to fall off. In almost 200 years, filled with more missions than I care to count with this hulking beast, I've yet to fall off. And if you think the hippos keep a messy vortex, you should try riding one cared for by the sloths. As Raykit spoke, she stood up and began looking up in the air. Do you see them? She asked Samson, who was also gazing up into the sky. Not yet. I suspect they aren't far off. Perhaps they're at another vortex, in which case it might be a while. Another vortex? Do you mean we could have gotten here without all that wind? Samson turned his attention to his little friend. Well, yes and no. Theoretically, we could have waited for another cloud to show up, but it might have taken days. Also, it would have been like thumbing our noses at the hippos. It's considered in bad taste not to accept the passing cloud. He turned his attention back to exploring the distant sky. After a few moments, Zach asked, What are we looking for? For he too had taken to studying the sky. The island, Raykit replied. When she didn't continue to explain, Zach tried again. An island. If we're looking for an island, wouldn't it make more sense to be looking for it in one of the lakes? Not this particular island, no, Samson replied without looking down. This is the floating island of the council. It should be here any moment. Anytime someone comes through a vortex, the council is alerted. They'll be very interested in seeing us, particularly you. Why me? Zach asked. For some reason, he didn't think he was going to like the answer. Several reasons, actually, Samson continued. First, you are the first human to be allowed on the spiritual frontier. Second, they're going to be very interested in learning how you plan to stop your species from polluting the world. They're what? Zach shrieked as he stared at Samson in disbelief. You've got to be kidding me. I don't have any plan. I have no idea what I'm going to do. This isn't even my idea. It's her idea, he said, pointing to Raykit. Does she have a plan? Samson ignored the question. Instead, he continued to walk around, turning from side to side, his eyes on the distance where a horizon should have been, but wasn't. After a few moments, he said, Well, I guess it's a good thing for you that they aren't here yet. It'll give you some time to come up with something. But you don't understand. Zach started, then stopped when he noticed Raykit staring at him. They didn't understand, that was for sure, and nothing he said was going to make them understand. Nothing except for the plan he didn't have. What was he going to tell them, these animal counselors? He doubted they would take his excuse that he was hoodwinked into accepting the task. In fact, he doubted they would be much interested in listening to any of his excuses. What they were looking for was a plan to save their friends and families back on Earth, a plan that would, in the process, save Zach's own family and friends. He thought of Angus lying in his cage at the clinic back on Earth, of Luke away at college, and his new friend, Allie. Yes, there was a lot at stake, and his excuses weren't going to make any difference. Okay, he thought, I'll just have to come up with a plan, if not now, at least by the time the United Nations Summit convenes. Right now, he just needed to convince the Council of Animals that he could handle the problem. But how? They
Okay, I'm going to pause this. Thank you, Ben. We're running out of time. We didn't get quite as far as I had anticipated, but that's fine. We're going to leave them with, but how are we going to go here? And I want to kind of wind a couple of things up. I'm going to start by doing a screen share here in just a second.
And are you going to talk about your bear?
Got to talk about my bear. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. And screen share. Screen share. Okay. So this is why you want to be in touch and keep a close eye in the next day or two for a follow-up email. The book that we're reading is Dominion Over All. And for those of you who may not be able to make it back to others read-ups, and I certainly hope you do, you're certainly invited to, but everyone who attends tonight will receive a free ebook and a copy of the audio book. So there'll be links in the email where you can go to download your ebook of Dominion Over All and also the audio book in case if you are into audiobooks. And if you're not, this might be a great time to actually try out an audiobook. And again, this audiobook, this book 1, 2, and 3 are all read by Benjamin Fife. So you can see how interesting it is with all the different, voice characters itself. The next read up, see if I can get over here to go to the next screen, see if that's going to work or not. There we go. The next read up will be next month, November the 17th. That is a Tuesday, not a Wednesday. We're shifting it to Tuesday for November and probably for December. So I would actually invite you and request that you mark your calendar, put it in existence. And I would really appreciate it if you enjoyed being here this evening, if you would share that date with your friends and other family members and anybody that you know from school. I know some of you are not in school right now because of the COVID, but you're doing a lot, through Zoom itself. So again, I would encourage you, I would love to double the number of people who are in attendance tonight, if at all possible. Bear. Why did I hold the bear all night? Well, as I told Donna as I was coming on, I get nervous about these things. I've done public speaking for probably the last 20 or 30 years. I've led seminars for, large organizations, all that, and I still get nervous. So this is a little bit my security blanket. But also, I've had this bear for probably, gosh, more years than I want to admit, probably at least 40 years.
Wow.
I bought him. He's actually a backpack. You can see he's got, thing. I bought him at Steamboat Springs while on a ski trip. And I've held him for all that years because he's just so cute. I just couldn't get rid of him. I've gotten rid of a lot of other stuff. But the reason I want to share this tonight is he appears, his name is Koala in the book. He appears in book number 4. And so it's one of the things I just want to point to those of you who might be just toying with the idea of, becoming a writer. I know JD has written a book or is in the process of writing a book. I know Ben has talked about writing a book. Some of you younger people here tonight might be thinking about maybe one day, someday writing a book. Know that everything in your environment is fair game to be used in your stories. I used him. I have a character as a young girl who's in the story, and I have a picture back here on my wall. That's the characters in the Junkyard Dog. And it's a young girl, and in the picture, she has like a teddy bear. But when I got into writing it, I needed something else. And I actually looked in my cabinet where he often stays, and it was like, oh, wait a minute. She doesn't have a teddy bear. she's got koala. So if you want to find out the rest of the story, like we used to say when we did book reviews in grade school, you'll have to buy the book and read it to find out what part koala bear plays itself. And that means I have to finish the book before you can read it. So I'm going to get back to that. Any last questions and or comments before we complete the evening? I do want to ask Danielle and Evelyn, I appreciate your being here and was just wondering, do you have, and it's fine if you don't, did you have other people with you tonight? I just wanted to kind of get a head count. So Danielle or Evelyn, could you come off mute and just let me know?
Sure. I have my Leah, who's usually going to be with me, but she had a family emergency, so she wasn't able to come tonight.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's too bad. Okay. And Evelyn, are you, if you're still there and available to come off mute? If not, we'll continue. She may have stepped away itself. Okay. Any last questions or comments as we wind it up here at the 8 o'clock hour?
I like it.
Evelyn said she's sent a message to the chat that said that her mic is not working, but she's here and she's just one by herself.
Thank you, Donna. Very good. I appreciate that. I missed that completely itself. So let me get out of the screen sharing. Thank you again, everybody. I'm going to stay online. So if somebody has a particular question you want to ask me or something you want to, share itself, but I do want to be conscious of your time. You've been very generous with the hour. So I hope to see you on the 17th. Take care and please keep reading. Good
Okay.
night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, Nathan.
Bye.
Hi, Nathan. Enjoyed it.
Bye. I
Good
did.
night, Eleanor.
And thank you, Eleanor, for your contributions of the drawings. Wow. And Millie did such a great job coloring hers. Wow.
She started another one during the reading. So we are hard at work on picture number 2.
Oh, look at you. Wonderful.
Very good.
Very good. Very good. She's quite the participant here. So great.
I'm
You
sure
had
that makes
asked
Eleanor happy to see her work being done.
You had asked if anyone wanted to be a writer, and Millie started. She likes the Who Was series, so she started Who Was Millie Grove. And when we said to her, don't you think that should be Who Is Millie Grove? She said, no, I'm writing this for my great-great-grandchildren.
Oh, I love it. That's so great. So great.
So we are looking into the future.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. That's so great.
So thank you guys for your time. We really enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the 17th.
Great.
Yes.
Very
thank
good.
you.
Thanks for all you've done, Nicole. I appreciate it.
No problem. Nice to meet you virtually in person.
Yeah. Yes.
Bye, guys.
Brad, did you want to chat with Eleanor anymore or anything about anything?
I do, not tonight. I've got another
Okay.
application to go to in just a little bit, but I do want to talk. I'll get in touch and we can do a face-to-face, about the book and all later. Now that this is kind of behind us, I got a little window of opportunity there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Brad.
Sure
We'll
thing.
call
Ben,
it
I
good
wanted
then.
to say something to you, Ben.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I wanted him to read more, much more. It's great. Thank you. My granddaughter her mom said she had to go to bed by 7:45, so she had to depart, but I enjoyed it. But it was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Well,
Enjoyed being here. Okay.
We'll
And
see.
my grandson, one of them just texted and said, Grandmary, we didn't realize it was midterms. We are studying.
Oh, okay.
So I said, well, communication in advance, my love. Because I thought they were all going to be on, but I know mom was over with the whip, So
Okay.
anyway, thanks, guys. Good night.
Good
All
night,
right.
everybody.
Well, we'll see you. We'll see you next month. Ta-ta.
Yeah, we'll talk there, Ben. Take care.